All right, good Saturday morning to everybody. Today is Saturday, May 8th. Thank you so much for those who are joining us live. Cesar, welcome on. I think there'll be some other folks coming on here as well in a moment. Nelson and Sabrina and Jen and some other folks typically will start joining on around this time. I do want to take a moment to say Happy Mother's Day to everybody who, all the mothers out there, especially my own. So Happy Mother's Day to you, Mom, as well as to my wife, Naomi. Happy Mother's Day. Today, we are honored to have someone named Haley Gant from Quest Trust Company, who I'm very excited to have on the show with us here today. I think before we bring her on, I do want to get sort of a background of who we are, what we do for anybody who might be watching this for the first time. Typically, most folks are watching this on a playback, which is completely understandable, especially on a Saturday morning, so I completely get it. But let us go ahead and jump in. So, as you see by the title here, Building Wealth with Self-Directed Retirement Accounts, I mean, that's really what we'll be diving into here today with Haley joining us and talking through that. She's sort of one of the experts in her company that talks about this, and really just a fascinating mechanism to be able to invest and to build wealth within the context of a retirement account, which I've done myself and many others as well. And honestly, probably still sort of a novel concept for a lot of people, even though, you know, I've known about it for at least 4 to 5 years, but then there are people who were doing it years before that, and there's people just learning about it today, which is hopefully what we'll be able to do is to provide you some education about what this thing is all about and how you can use funds that you've actually got stored away to start investing in real estate as well as other stuff as well. So first, a little bit about our company. The name of our company is called Redeem Investments. Our tagline is renovating properties, transforming lives, and really the company has continued to evolve so that the properties that we're talking about are not just real estate in the forms of apartment buildings or residential properties, but really now just taking land and using it for its highest and best use or other forms of uses that may not have been contemplated before. And so renewable energy is actually something that we're delving into here, and they're very excited about that. We're actually launching a renewable energy fund within the next couple of weeks. Haley, that's something that I should probably tell you about here soon. And so I'm very excited about what we're doing there. First of all, I will say that as a disclaimer, I'm not an attorney or a licensed investment advisor. I'm not an accountant. And the information we're sharing here is really for educational purposes only, and really sharing about, you know, my own personal experience, and then of course allowing Haley to talk to you about the services that they do, and she's certainly the expert, whereas I am not. A little bit more about our company and how we're structured. Really, you can think about Redeem Investments into 3 main tiers. Redeem Realty Solutions is the arm of our company that focuses on residential real estate. So, you know, wholesaling, fix and flips, that type of thing in the residential realm. There's not a whole lot of that we do now. We did do a wholesale deal just a week or so ago for a property in San Antonio. But really the main focus for us now has pivoted to commercial real estate, namely apartments. We may look at storage, self-storage here as well, but namely apartments, and then as well renewable energy. And so I just mentioned that. And in either case, we're looking at the investment fund model, which you can also use self-directed retirement accounts to invest with. So more to follow on that, and happy to answer questions from folks as those come up. Speaking of questions, while Haley is presenting, should any questions arise, I will be monitoring that. And we'll have Q&A sessions sort of on the back end of her presentation. But if there's something that any folks submit during the presentation, I may very well politely interrupt Haley and say, hey, this is relevant to what you're presenting. Can you answer this, please? And so feel free to input those questions as they come up. And I'll triage those and either ask Haley then or on the back end. The other thing is, from a timing perspective, again, want to be respectful of everybody's time. We typically end these things before the top of the hour, so well within that hour range on a Saturday morning. And again, there's many folks that will watch this after the fact, and so that will be helpful for them as well. The other thing that I say that we do is exactly what you're experiencing now, or at least part of it, which is we offer a mastermind. So it's called the Redeem Team Mastermind. And so let me tell you a little bit about what's involved with that. So the way that masterminds can be structured in all sorts of different ways. The way that we structure our mastermind is truly a JV partnership program, wherein those who are interested in becoming a sponsor or a general partner of real estate deals, investment funds, whatever it may be, we sort of pull back the curtain and allow you to take a peek at how all of that stuff works. And so it's not just merely an offer to be part of an education group or a networking group or even a mentorship group, although all those things come with our program. It's really to be a partner with us. Case in point, members of our mastermind now are serving as a general partner for this renewable energy fund that we're launching. Without them being a mastermind member, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to participate as a GP in that type of investment opportunity. So they're extremely excited about that. Provides access to things, so resources, training, meetings and events. So this, what we're experiencing now, this monthly webinar that you guys are taking part in, is one of those meetings and events. We do try to, we will cap this. We're not quite at 50 members. We've got plenty of room actually now for those who might be interested in joining. But that is sort of the number that I've set, just to be able to ensure that I have enough capacity to share my time with everybody, because you have unlimited one-on-ones with me as part of the mastermind program. As far as who some of our members are now, just to give you a glimpse of that, you've got, like myself, West Point graduates, there's a Naval Academy graduate that's part of our team. They're all in real estate to some extent, either part-time or full-time. You can see sort of a list here of some of the types of backgrounds that they have there. The next question usually is, how can I participate? First of all, if it's just a matter of wanting to learn more, you can go to our website. Folks who would like to invest with us, simply just from a limited partner standpoint, can go to invest@redeeminvestments.com. And then those who are interested in joining our mastermind can go to our website and click on the mastermind section and learn more about that there. Again, it's a JV partnership program, really ideal for those who are wanting to be a general partner. Not for everybody, because there is a cost associated and an expectation of participating and holding each other accountable to goals that we set as a group. Those who are interested in serving as a limited partner solely, there's positions we have available for that. It's risk-free, I'll say that as well, because it is an investment of money. But that invested of money, actually, I allocate to a limited partner position when we take down the deal. So there's really virtually no risk at all, because that money is going to get put to use. And it does provide access to invaluable resources, as I named before. This gives you a listing of some events that are coming up. Next month, we have our quarterly meetup taking place. Last year, we did this really cool and memorable fishing trip to Orange Beach, Alabama. This year it's going to be in Galveston. Very excited about that. We also have our mastermind member retreat and taking place in Cancun. The really cool thing about that is the discounts that I get for these locations, which are all inclusive, I make available to folks. So that trip normally costs $4,400, and I'm getting it for $1,500, as are the fellow mastermind members who are coming with. And I think there's probably 10 or 12 of us going at this point, last time I checked, which is very exciting. So we've got, I won't go through all these. This just gives you a glimpse into some of the upcoming topics for the remainder of the year. And then these are the things that we've already done this year. So the different meetups that we have, the different topics that we've covered, economic outlooks, our acquisitions team, tax stuff, which is sort of important, and then the concierge service that we offer, and then now with Ms. Haley talking about self-directed retirement accounts. So very quickly, this is Haley coming on board, and the topic of self-directed IRAs is very important when we think about the wealth formula, which I sort of simplified to 3 steps, which is you got to make money somehow. If you're not making that money, there's no way to either keep it, there's no money to keep or to multiply. Keeping your money talks about things like taxes and capital preservation, insurance products that help to ensure liability and asset protection, some of those things, and then multiplying money, obviously, with investing and some of those other things. And I really feel like one of the best venues of investing really is within commercial real estate or investment funds, and the benefits that come with that for me involve things like cash flow and tax advantages, all these things here that are just kind of flashing. But I think for the context of today, the ones that I've bolded here, capital preservation, velocity of money, and tax advantages, really are kind of wrapped up into this idea, at least in my opinion, of being able to use self-directed retirement accounts. And so with that, let me transition over to Haley because she's got some valuable information to share with us as it relates to this topic. And I'm just super excited that she's taking time out of her Saturday and her weekend to join us here. So with that, let me hand it over to you, Miss Haley Gant.
Awesome, Christian. Thank you for having me today. And even though it's early on a Saturday morning, I personally love teaching about self-directed IRAs. I really enjoy doing these types of presentations and education because it's a really valuable topic that not a lot of people teach about. Not a lot of people are experts in going out to do the type of education that we do here at Quest. So give me one moment. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared. Let's see. All right. So can y'all see that okay?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. Let me make note of my time here. All right. So today's presentation is titled Fundamentals of Wealth Building with Self-Directed IRAs. And I will let you guys know I only have about 30 minutes to introduce these topics to you guys here today, which obviously is not enough time to become a full-on expert in all things self-directed IRAs. But hopefully the goal of this presentation is to open up your mind a little bit to the different options that you actually have to invest with your retirement account, the different types of investments that can be held in an IRA, and really just kind of how to get the most out of your IRA investments to have that money in that account grow completely tax deferred or tax free, depending on what type of account you are investing with. Now, since I know, Christian, you've got like a fund coming up, I know a lot of you people might be looking to maybe syndicate deals yourself one day too, which self-directed IRAs can play a huge part in that. Because a lot of times as investors and individuals are raising private capital for their deals, a lot of times a big bulk of that capital actually comes from other people's IRAs. So in today's presentation, I'll kind of focus a little bit on both of those sides and how it works, let you guys know a little bit about the processes and my best pieces of advice to you guys for your IRA investments to go smoothly. Now, a little bit of background about me. I have been at Quest for about 5 years. I am one of our certified IRA specialists, and I actually work very closely with the rest of our marketing team to put on a lot of our events that we host at Quest. We coordinate a lot of guest presentations like this, and hopefully moving forward a little bit later into this year, we go out and we travel to a lot of places to provide this type of education as well. Now, how did I end up teaching people about IRAs? I've actually grown up around real estate pretty much my entire life. My parents are real estate investors. I'm an only child, so I had no choice but to grow up surrounded by everything real estate investing. And along that way, I actually got introduced to self-directed IRAs when I was in high school, believe it or not. And sure enough, I ended up graduating college, came to work for Quest shortly after that. And that was almost 5 years ago. So I hope you guys enjoy the presentation. And if you have any questions, I can help answer those at the end, or I will have a couple of slides at the end of how you can access some more of our different educational resources that we offer there as well. So just a quick tidbit about Quest. Won't spend too long on this since you guys are really here for the meat and the education. But we're a self-directed IRA custodian. We're based out of Houston, Texas, but we do have clients all across the US. We're a pretty good sized company, got about $2 billion in assets under management. But the most important part of this slide here, really quick, is our disclaimer, pretty standard. Quest does not give tax, legal, or investment advice. And it's really important that no matter where you are investing your funds, whether it's IRA funds or your own personal funds, that you understand the roles of the individuals in these situations, and you make sure that you're taking the time to do your own due diligence before getting into investments. Make sure it's the right type of deal for you, and make sure that you're taking the time to work with the right groups, kind of like we are here today, to make sure that you have the right professionals on your side to help these deals go smoothly and to help make sure that your money and your investments are protected. So, got to do that quick disclaimer, but let's go ahead and get right into the presentation. So, the main kind of like basics foundations of what is a self-directed IRA. To be completely honest, the IRAs that we hold at Quest legally are exactly the same as any IRA that you have at any other custodian. Really, the only difference is the types of assets that your custodian allows you to invest in. So, most traditional custodians like Fidelity, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, um, a lot of those more traditional custodians, their platforms are only set up to allow you to invest your IRA into publicly traded assets, things like stocks, mutual funds, publicly traded securities. And to be honest, that is what about 98% of Americans have their IRAs invested in. But what most people don't know is that you do actually have the ability to directly invest into real estate, promissory notes, or private placements in your IRA. And you still get all of the same tax advantages that an IRA would normally get. So at Quest, instead of us holding stocks or mutual funds or other publicly traded assets, we specifically specialize in holding privately held assets. That's what our platforms are set up for. And our clients actually get to self-direct their IRAs into the types of assets that they want to invest in. So there's no legal distinction. The IRAs are exactly the same. And we'll cover this more here on a few slides, but you can actually move money back and forth between your IRAs at different custodians pretty much at any time. Now, where people really need to start thinking a little bit differently is just, where should your money be invested in? What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? And how can you use the tools that you have as a real estate investor to grow the money in your retirement account? So, this is a huge advantage of having at least a good base knowledge about the types of investments you can hold in a self directed IRA. Because I know as we go out there and we talk to real estate investors pretty much all across the US, everyone is kind of on a different path. Every real estate investor has their different specialty. But no matter what you might be interested in investing in, whether you want to be passive, whether you want to be active, or whether you're maybe looking to raise private capital for your deals, by having a good base knowledge of self-directed IRAs and kind of how they work, it can really be beneficial to you in so many different ways, no matter what types of investments you might be looking to hold within your retirement account. So to kind of recap on this slide, it allows for diversification. Your IRA gets really awesome tax advantages that we actually do not get as individuals. So every year as an individual, you are a taxpayer. So you have to file your taxes, pay a chunk back to Uncle Sam, unfortunately, every single year. Whereas when you invest with your IRA, all of the profit that you make from those deals actually goes back into your IRA, and it's reported totally separate than your own personal income taxes each year. So as we're going out and we're building up multiple streams of income, we're having probably, somewhat a higher taxable income each year. It's really important that you're doing at least some of your investments in an IRA that's growing either completely tax deferred or tax free, again, depending on what type of account it is. That way, you're sheltering some of your income each year from your own personal income taxes. And the way that I like to think about it, I personally was an economics major. So I always like to think of the opportunity cost, where as an individual, if I'm paying anywhere from 20 to 30% of my income back to Uncle Sam each year, my IRA is not losing that large chunk of income. And then multiply that over the next 5, 10, maybe even 20 years, however long you have until retirement. And, your IRA is not going to grow overnight, no matter what you're investing in. But the most important part is laying the foundations, getting this education so you can start to grow your IRA, maybe do 1 or 2 deals a year. And then again, when you compound that over the course of your lifetime, and then your heirs eventually inherit that account, potentially completely tax-free as well. There's a really huge wealth building opportunity here, and just not a lot of people are getting the right education about it. But we do have a lot of resources for you guys. So that way it can help you build wealth and actually truly understand how these IRAs work. So moving right along, I kind of like to throw these figures in here, but I won't spend too long on this. This is just how much you need for retirement. There's something really cool called the 4% rule, where if you actually divide your annual retirement income by 4%, that will estimate how much you need by the time you hit retirement. So for example, if you need $80,000 a year in retirement, you should plan to have about $2 million saved. So again, going back to finding out the types of investments you can hold in an IRA, how to get the most out of those, and then compound that. That is what is going to get you to where you need to be. And hopefully through this presentation, you guys learn a little bit more how to do that today. So the types of accounts. As I was mentioning, the IRAs that we hold at Quest legally are exactly the same as any IRA that you have at any other custodian. The only difference is the types of assets that we allow you to invest in. So all 7 of these accounts that you see here on the screen technically can all be self-directed IRAs. Self-directed doesn't really specify the actual type of account. And in a lot of our presentations, we actually spend probably close to 30 minutes alone just on the types of accounts. Because in order to understand how you can grow your IRA, you first need to understand what types of accounts you should really even be using in the first place. So I won't go into 30 minutes worth of detail on this slide here today. But if you guys have more questions about the types of accounts, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. And I'll have our contact information here at the end of these slides. Now, as far as the types of accounts, though, I do think it's important to understand the different kind of needs that they fit. We break these accounts down into 3 different categories. Now, most Americans out there will have their funds in some sort of personal plan. So when you have a 401k with your employer and you eventually leave that job, at that point, you're eligible to roll over those funds into an IRA. Now, 9 times out of 10, your 401k will roll over into a traditional IRA without any tax implications. So your traditional IRA is going to grow tax deferred, just like your 401k is more than likely currently growing. And what do I mean when I say tax deferred? Basically, whenever you make contributions to your 401k or to a traditional IRA, typically those contributions are tax deductible. So you get a tax deduction when you put the money in. So everything else that grows from there is considered to have not been taxed yet. So it's growing tax deferred. So as you're investing your IRA over the course of your lifetime, none of that money is going to be taxed while the account is growing, but you will have to pay taxes on your distributions later at retirement once you start to take those funds out for personal use. At that point, it's basically just taxed as ordinary income. But, and again, all of these accounts can be self-directed in exactly the same way. But as real estate investors, I think it's really important that everyone out there should have a Roth IRA. And I personally believe, I can't tell you what to do because I can't give you that type of advice, but I personally believe that every American out there should have a Roth IRA. And if you are self-directing your IRAs, you should be doing at least some of your investments in a Roth IRA. And the reason for that is because whereas your traditional IRA grows tax deferred and you have to pay taxes once you actually start to take that money out, the Roth IRA is actually the exact opposite. So the Roth IRA, whenever you make contributions or whenever you put money in, it's your after-tax dollars that initially go into the Roth IRA. And that allows everything else that grows from there to consider to have already been taxed. So everything that grows in your Roth IRA is completely tax-free. As long as you wait until you're 59 and a half to start taking that money out for personal use, all of that money in the Roth IRA is actually yours. It's completely tax-free, and you'll never have to pay income taxes or capital gains taxes on that growth in your Roth IRA. Now, the only thing is most Americans have their funds in some sort of tax deferred account. And one thing that I always like to touch on and educate on in my presentations is the ability for people to do a Roth conversion, where basically you can take funds from your traditional IRA that's growing tax deferred, and you can convert some of them, all of them, totally up to you. You can convert some of those funds into a Roth IRA. And basically, whatever amount you convert into the Roth, you're going to pay income taxes on that amount. It's basically added to your taxable income for that year. But once you do that Roth conversion and you pay taxes up front on whatever you move into the Roth, everything else that grows from there is completely tax-free for the rest of your life. And eventually, once you pass that IRA onto your heirs, they will also inherit that Roth IRA completely tax-free. So a Roth IRA is a great way to avoid taxes on the long-term gains and growth in that IRA. And it's a great way to pass on that wealth completely tax-free to the next generation. So that's always something that I really like to touch on. Again, you don't have to do a Roth conversion, but I think it's really important that as real estate investors, when we have the ability to self-direct our IRAs and potentially substantially grow the account by the time you hit retirement, you should definitely be thinking, should I do a conversion this year? Should I maybe just convert pieces at a time based on where I'm wanting to invest the funds? It's not something you have to do, but I like for people to have that piece of education because it could potentially be a great option for certain people out there. Now, moving right along, the other types of accounts on this screen here, the employer plans, these are very valuable if you are self-employed. They allow for much higher contribution limits, and most times these contributions to the employer plans are also tax deductible. So it could minimize your tax liability for the year. To find out for sure, I would highly recommend consulting with your CPA or tax advisor because, again, I can't give you tax advice. But whereas Quest can provide a lot of education, you want to make sure that you're working with like Quest and your CPA and your tax advisor and your attorney and kind of having all of these professionals kind of on different, legs together. That way we can all help you based on where our specialty is. Kind of side note there. But for you guys, one thing I do want to focus on a little bit in the employer plans here is the solo 401k. I know, Christian, in our previous conversations, I think UBIT, my personal favorite topic, has come up in almost every conversation we've had leading up until this presentation. So we'll get to UBIT a little bit on the later slides. I hate to throw it in at the very beginning. But if you are self-employed with no W-2 employees, you do qualify for the solo 401k. You want to make sure that you are using this plan appropriately. It gives you a lot more freedom than our other IRA accounts. Whereas the solo 401k, you actually act as your own trustee over that plan, which means you get the checkbook, you can make larger contributions. And a huge benefit of the solo 401k is if you are using that account to invest passively into syndications that might oftentimes trigger UBIT within an IRA, a solo 401k just straight up gets an exemption on the UBIT tax when it comes to investing into debt leveraged property. So without going down too many rabbit holes there, if you guys are self-employed with no W-2 employees and you've maybe looked into the solo 401k a little bit, feel free to reach out to us after this presentation. I don't personally do these consultations, but I work very closely with our other IRA specialists who actually specialize in establishing solo 401k plans for our clients. We just want to make sure that you understand the plan and that you understand the responsibility that you're signing up for before we just throw all the paperwork at you and let you establish it without any of that background information. So those employer plans can be really valuable as well. And last but not least, the specialty plans. I really like these. They are very underutilized, but the health savings account and the Coverdell Education Savings Account can be self-directed, just like all of our other plans, but you can actually access the money today completely tax-free. Even if you're nowhere near 59 and a half, you can use the growth in your health savings account to pay for all of your health expenses and medical expenses completely tax-free for you or potentially you, your family, and your dependents. And the Coverdell Education Savings Account can be used to pay for your children's educational expenses completely tax-free. Now, a lot of people kind of might shy away from these specialty plans a little bit because typically they are a little bit smaller. But where the magic comes in is you as a real estate investor understanding the different creative ways that you can invest and grow these accounts. And then kind of once you get that level of foundation, you can also partner these accounts together. Most families do not have just one IRA or one account for their whole family. It might be more of a situation where, like, the wife has a 401k, the husband left his job years ago and finally just rolled it over to an IRA. Maybe they started a small Roth IRA years ago and haven't really done anything with it because it's really small. For a lot of you guys watching this out there, that conversation probably starts to sound really familiar because that's how most people have their retirement plans. They often have different chunks in different places. So once you understand the types of accounts that can be self-directed, at Quest, we can walk you through which ones, you might be looking at for you and your immediate family. And then learning how to partner these accounts together and using multiple IRAs together on your investments. So you're growing multiple buckets of money all at the same time. So again, if you have questions about the types of accounts, just let us know. And I always like to include this slide in here. I'm not going to go through each individual contribution limit, but I will let you guys know if you're watching this in May, this is accurate information. If you're watching this after May, this is pre-recorded, but you still have up until May 17th, 2021 to max out any 2020 contributions. So you do have just a little bit of time, but I kind of like to include this slide in here because people liked these figures. And if anyone wants a copy of these slides, just reach out to me. I am more than happy to send them to you. Now, so we've covered the basics, we've covered the types of accounts. Now, what can you actually use your IRA to invest in? You have a lot of different options. It is totally self-directed, meaning Quest does not provide investments. We can't provide investment advice. We have to stay very neutral. So a lot of times it really comes down to you as the investor utilizing this education and information that you have about how you can invest your IRA, and then utilizing your network and the people in your circle to find the deals and make sure that you are doing the due diligence together to make sure that you are structuring the deals properly for your IRA. Now, as far as the different investment types, at Quest, we break it down into 3 different categories. Real estate would be like the direct ownership of real estate within the IRA. Private entities is a very popular investment because a lot of people like to be just 100% passive with their IRAs. So private entities would be something like investing your IRA into a syndication, investing it passively into a commercial deal, or a lot of times we see like private bank stock and different kind of things like that. And last but not least, the largest class of assets that we hold at Quest is promissory notes. So again, a lot of people like to use their IRAs to be completely passive and maybe purchase existing notes, maybe loan other investors funds for their investments. Promissory notes is the largest class of assets that we hold. Private entities is right behind that. And believe it or not, real estate by a small margin is the smallest class of assets that our clients hold at Quest, just because it's a little bit more hands-on and a lot of people really like to use their IRAs to be passive. So kind of taking that information and taking a step back to both sides of the equation. If you have your own IRA, you can invest it into any of these different types of deals. But if you're looking to raise private capital, raising private capital from other people's IRAs could be a great source because so many people are looking for these different passive options to invest in. So here's kind of an overview of the process of how it all works. And on this slide, I'm really going to focus in on the timeframes here because the timeframes are very important. Internally, our processes at Quest are very fast. It's always going to be 24 to 48 hours from the time that we have the executed documents that we need. But one really important time frame that you always want to keep in mind when you are investing with your IRA is this step number 2 right here. So once you have your IRA open, that process is very fast. It's a really short packet you fill out to actually establish your IRA. But if you are establishing a self-directed IRA with the intentions to invest it somewhere, the time frame that it takes your current custodian to send us the funds, we actually have no control over that time frame. That process to get your funds moved over to Quest or whoever your self-directed IRA custodian is could take anywhere from 3 to 5 business days to 3 to 5 weeks, just depending on where the funds are coming from. So it's really important to be aware of this time frame. Again, we actually have a lot of clients that keep IRAs at both types of custodians. They might have their IRA at Fidelity, and they might also have their IRA at Quest, and maybe just transfer over part of their funds, self-directed into an investment, see how it goes. And then if another deal comes across their plate, they can always transfer more funds over to their Quest account. But when you're doing this, you just really want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time for this transaction to take place. Whether you're rolling over funds from a 401k or transferring from an IRA, you just want to make sure that you give yourself, a couple of weeks probably to make sure that that can happen in time for us to actually fund the investment. Now, in today's day and age, with technology being king, we do have a really nice client portal where you can actually upload investment documents. You can complete the entire direction of investment form completely online through the portal. Christian, I'm not even sure if you know about this, but it's our new QTC investment hub. It's brand new as of April of this year. And it's going to really streamline the process of our transactions team reviewing the documents, the read and approved signatures, and it all updates.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And it all updates in real time on the client's end through the client portal.
Sweet.
Yes. Oh, I think I stopped sharing my screen. Give me 1 second.
Mhm.
Got a little excited, just clicked in the wrong place. Okay, so that's the timeframes there. And guys, I am going a little fast for time purposes, but I'll cover as much information here as I can. As you're self-directing your IRA, it's really important to know the basics. We've already covered a lot of this, but just to kind of emphasize it one more time, to really be successful with this, understand the types of accounts that can be self-directed, understand if your 401k is even eligible to be rolled over. Most times you do have to have left that job in order to be eligible to actually move those funds. But once it's in an IRA, you can transfer it around pretty freely however you want to. Be aware of the timeframes. We just covered that. And something that's really important whenever you're investing with your IRA is to understand the documentation required and to understand what the IRA custodian will need. Because when you're investing with your IRA, it's not you doing the investment, it's your IRA doing the investment. You, as the client, direct Quest where you want your IRA invested. And to do that, you basically send us investment documents that actually show your IRA taking title to this investment. So it won't be you doing the investment, it'll be Quest Trust Company for the benefit of your name and your IRA account number. You'll also need to sign off on all of these documents. That's really important. But again, actually through the new QTC Investment Hub, it actually really automates that process and you can just upload it all directly online. And I'll kind of go through this quickly, again, for time purposes, but overall, A to Z, once you know the foundations, you understand the types of accounts, maybe you've now gone through a consultation with an IRA specialist and you're like, okay, cool. Now what do I do? Where do I actually find deals to invest in with my IRA? Because Quest can't provide the deals for you. So first and foremost, go out and build a network. That's why you guys are here in this mastermind group. That's why you go to real estate events and things like that, local meetups. Go out, build a network, find other people to add to your power team, and know how to introduce the conversation. This actually came directly from my Raising Private Capital. Probably should have changed this verbiage a little bit. But if you're looking to invest your IRA passively with people, or if you're looking to raise private capital, know how to throw IRAs into the conversation. It's not as hard as you might think. But, ask people, do you have an IRA? Are you looking to invest? Do you have any deals going? I'm kind of looking to passively invest somewhere right now. I'm sure you guys probably have these conversations all the time. You just really kind of need to train yourself how to throw in the IRA side of it into the conversation. But then once you do this, know when to bring Quest or your IRA custodian into the conversation, because you don't have to know everything that we know. You want to make sure that you have the right resources that you can rely on when it comes to high level specific types of questions. If it's IRA questions, call Quest. If it's tax questions, call your CPA. So know when to bring in the experts, and make sure you keep a good reputation. Reputation and ethics is everything in this business, and make sure you're using professionals to structure your deals. Now, how to make your deals go smoothly. Again, I've already covered a lot of this, but I do like to include it in here just to emphasize here at the end. Understand the time frames. That is so important. A lot of times as you're dealing with your own IRA, or you might be dealing with other people's IRAs, you want to make sure that you give yourself enough wiggle room. You want to make sure that you bring in your custodian to the process once you know you'll actually be doing that investment with your IRA. And keep the lines of communication open between all parties, whoever you're investing with. If there's a title company in with the deal, the title company 100% needs to know that this investment is being done with an IRA. And if you can let them know that from the beginning, it really helps to streamline the entire process. And something else that I think is really important to report on or to touch on here is the annual reporting requirements when you're investing with an IRA. Now, kind of taking two different angles here. The first one is fair market values. Every year as an IRA custodian, we actually have to report the fair market values of all of the assets that are held in our clients' IRA accounts. So every year towards the end of the year, we'll send out some notices. You'll need to log into the client portal and basically just update your fair market values for your assets each year. This is something that as a custodian, we have to collect from all of our clients, but it's just important to recognize that you will need to submit that. And if you have several IRA investors invested with you around this time of year, they're going to start reaching out to you for some sort of supporting documentation. If you have a lot of IRA investors invested with you, you can send us something as as simple as an email or a spreadsheet that kind of relays those current IRA investment values. Also, UBIT, unrelated business income tax. This is a huge topic of conversation. It's kind of one of those topics that falls in between different people's expertise, where your CPA might know a lot of tax, but they might not be an expert in UBIT with self-directed IRAs. If you call your IRA custodian, we can teach you about UBIT, but we can't give you tax advice. So it is one of those topics that it always becomes a hot topic of conversation. And due to that, I have unintentionally almost become our in-house UBIT expert and UBIT nerd, as I would consider myself. But UBIT, or unrelated business income tax, is actually a tax that can occur within the IRA that might actually have to cause your IRA to file its own tax return. And this is called a 990T. Now, not every investment will trigger UBIT within an IRA, but certain types of investments have a very likely chance that your IRA will incur UBIT and it'll have to file that 990T. Now, these types of investments are if you invest your IRA into an ongoing trade or business, it'll likely incur unrelated business income tax. The other one that really comes into play for a lot of people is if the IRA invests into debt leveraged property, or if the IRA invests into an entity that is owning debt leveraged property. Now, a lot of times, if an IRA invests into an entity that is owning debt leveraged property, if this entity or LLC is structured as a pass through entity where it's passing on the taxes to the investors, once that K1 starts to show a profit of over $1,000, it is likely at that point that the IRAs involved will incur UBIT. But a lot of people get really afraid about UBIT. It's definitely something that you want to take into consideration when you're running your numbers initially for the investment. But UBIT is only on a portion of the profits. It's based off of the percentage that is debt leveraged. So say if your IRA is invested into this entity, it's owning a big multifamily complex, which is very common, and say it's 50% debt leverage, just to keep numbers easy. Once that K1 starts to show a profit of over $1,000, then 50% of the income to the IRA will be subject to UBIT. But once this income to the IRA is subject to UBIT, you can then use the normal sort of write-offs like depreciation, expenses to minimize the UBIT, to kind of add some write-offs in there. And most times the UBIT does end up becoming pretty minimal, but it's really important that you work with a CPA who is knowledgeable about self-directed IRAs, about real estate investing, and about specifically filing that 990T that shows that unrelated business income tax.
Hey, Haley, let me ask a question on that because typically what we find is that because by virtue of its structure, a retirement account has tax advantages, and which means that even within a real estate syndication where there's a significant amount of depreciation, for example, that can be used to offset any income from the property that investors receive, that they're being presented with K1s that are showing sometimes a significant loss, which is a good thing for tax purposes, but for folks who are investing with a self-directed account isn't really applicable. But I think what you're saying, is it fair to say then that in the event that UBIT is applicable, that same K1 that otherwise would not be applicable can then be used to help offset whatever these UBIT taxes may be? Is that when it can come into play?
Yes, that is very true. Because a lot of times these investments will operate at a loss for the first couple of years. So if the K1 is not showing a profit of over $1,000, UBIT will not occur in those years. But once the K1 does start to show a profit of over $1,000, you could potentially use those previous years to offset.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And in regards to that, I've actually done a really nice interview on our YouTube channel with a CPA here in Houston. It's about 45 minutes long, and it is all about UBIT. To be honest, the CPA that spoke on it with us, he explains everything in his tax CPA lingo. I hardly understood it, but I understood it enough to translate it to normal English. So that's a really great source for you guys as well. Christian, I'll send you that link.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Definitely. So, yep, there's my piece about UBIT there. I'm sorry I don't have more of a visual to go along with that. Maybe one day I'll create some better slides for that, but hopefully that explanation was decent. But again, if you guys are self-employed, look into that solo 401k. Make sure that you're doing what you need to from year to year to keep your solo 401k plan in compliance with the IRS. But that could potentially just make UBIT altogether just go away, which is a really awesome advantage of that account.
Cool.
And just to kind of wrap it up here, guys, here's some of our other educational resources that we offer. We're on YouTube. I host a virtual happy hour twice a month. We do our own webinars, and we're always happy to help answer questions for you. I know a lot of you guys will be watching this on the replay, but if you happen to be watching this before May 17th, 2021, we are waiving account opening fees right now. If you're watching this after, I'm sorry, but still give us a call. We've always got something going on. We've got some big like conferences and events coming up as well that we can definitely register you guys for tickets for. If you have questions, let us know. There's a lot of IRA custodians out there, but I will let you guys know at Quest, we really pride ourselves on being very educated in IRAs, being able to answer the high level questions for you, and being very accessible if you need to get a hold of us, which is so important, especially as you're dealing with IRA investments, things that are time sensitive. It needs to be funded. You want to make sure that you're working with someone that has their goals aligned with yours. And at Quest, that is exactly what we're here to do. We're here to answer questions for you. Attend our events, check it out, check out our YouTube, and just reach out to us if you have any questions. I hope that was helpful. If you guys have more questions, let me know, and I'm happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Haley. Really appreciate that. I think you answered all of the questions that I had in mind to ask you, with the exception of one I don't remember you touching on, so I'll ask you now. And I know the answer, but for the purpose of the audience and folks who are listening, what can you not use your self-directed account for? Because you did a good job outlining what you can use it for, but what can you not use it for? And specifically, I'm thinking about, investment properties that you own and whether you can actually use that for your personal benefit or not. Maybe speak to that, and then any other things that you may not be able to use it for.
Definitely. And I'm actually glad you brought that up. I had a feeling that's where you were going with that. I don't have those slides in this presentation, just for time purposes, trying to cut it down, but I did mean to mention it. So I'm glad you asked. And that's really important because there are some things that you cannot use your IRA to invest in. Basically, the golden rule of IRAs is that our IRAs get really awesome tax advantages to help us save for retirement. Therefore, the IRS does not want you using your IRA to do investments that directly benefit you today. So there are some rules. There are some people that your IRA cannot invest with. And basically, you can't use your IRA to invest into your own business. You can't use your IRA to loan yourself money. If you're the managing partner of a syndication, you can't use your IRA to invest into your own syndication because that's a clear personal benefit to you today, right? Whereas the IRS really wants the benefit from your IRA to be when you retire, not today. So there are some lovely things called prohibited transactions and disqualified people, where basically, I can't use my IRA to invest into my own business. I am what we consider a disqualified person to my IRA. So I can't benefit from my IRA investments. There are just a few other family members that are just as disqualified as I am. It's basically you and your spouse, anyone directly up and down on your family tree. So your parents, your kids, your grandparents, your grandkids, their spouses, and any companies that these people might own or control are just as disqualified as the individual. So it's just you, spouse, parents, kids, their spouses, that your IRA cannot invest in their business, can't loan money to. You couldn't buy a rental property with your IRA and go live in it yourself, because that's a clear personal benefit. And you really need to keep yourself and your IRA investments at arm's length, where you as the IRA holder, you still make all of the investment and financial decisions for your IRA, but all of the payments, all work goes through Quest. And you just basically let us know when something needs to be funded or processed. So you're really keeping things at arm's length there. Now, as far as other things that you can invest in or cannot invest in, there's only two things that the IRS says you cannot invest in, and that's life insurance contracts and collectibles. Other than that, there's a whole world of opportunity of where you'd like to invest your IRA in, again, just as long as you're not personally benefiting from those investments.
Very cool. Thank you for that very comprehensive answer. So thank you.
I'm glad you asked. It's a good thing to bring up. And I actually meant to bring it up in the types of investments slide.
Yeah, and just one thing to add to that, and I think you really spoke to it, but just as a personal example, in our multifamily syndication deals where I'm the general partner and the sponsor for it, and I have family members, my mother-in-law, for example, who wanted to invest and had an adequate amount available within her retirement accounts that she could have brought to a custodian. Because of this rule and this topic that we're discussing, she was prohibited from being able to invest because she fell under the disqualified personnel ruling for that. So she unfortunately is not invested in our deals for that reason as of yet. So, but very important topic to be aware of. I think with that, we'll go ahead and look to close. And let me just say this. First of all, Haley, thank you so much. You're obviously delivering a valuable service to those who have funds available within their retirement accounts that they can use to start investing, whether that's with me or anyone else that have deals available for them, or if they want to start investing using that money into their own deals that they are, one serving as the manager for and are using it to build wealth. So great information again for someone like me, rewind 4 or 5 years ago who just got started using these types of vehicles. It really can be and is a game changer for folks. So just I will also say this because of what we're doing and the opportunities for investments that we're making available for people. I've run across several who have had retirement accounts that were able to roll over, and without question, I've sent them Haley's way to Quest. And so there's a number of people. I really have just lost count in terms of how many people have now set up accounts that are invested with us at this point. And I should point out, just sort of full disclosure, there's no form of payment or anything that I'm receiving for this, simply that Haley and her team have done a great job. And so she's sort of become my go-to as far as custodians to send people to. So with that said, Haley, any parting words of wisdom as we shut down?
Yeah, I think one of the last things I'd like to touch on is, there's no amount too small to get started. You can take the knowledge that you have, apply it to your IRA, but everyone's got to start somewhere, and it's not going to grow itself. So take the steps today, plant the right seeds, and create a plan for how you're going to get you and your family where you need to be by the time you hit retirement. And I think there's definitely a big point to be made about building generational wealth here. I'm a product of it. I've worked very hard in my professional career, but I wouldn't have gotten the foundations that I had if it weren't for my parents making sacrifices 20 years ago to quit their corporate jobs, invest into real estate, start building from the ground up pretty much. And it's really given me a leg up in my life. And I kind of plan to continue that legacy. And so think about not just what's happening today, how you can make money today, but the effect that it's going to have on your heirs and your family 20 or 30 years from now, because it's going to make a huge difference. And I just always kind of like to touch on that.
Yeah, that's perfect. And that's, I don't know if you remember one of my slides, it really touches on that topic exactly, legacy wealth, right? And so, yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. So thank you for sharing that final point. Really appreciate it. Okay, so again, with that, thank you again so much for joining. Happy Mother's Day once again, and we'll talk to you soon. God bless. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks, Haley. Take care now. Bye-bye.